What if the greatest success story of the 20th century wasn't built on a business plan? What if it wasn't about market research, or venture capital, or 5-year projections? What if it was built on a ghost story? A promise whispered in the ruins. To establish an ideal factory that stresses a spirit of freedom and open-mindedness, where engineers with sincere motivation can exercise their technological skills to the highest level, to reconstruct Japan and to elevate the nation's culture through dynamic, technological, and manufacturing activity. This wasn't a motivational poster. This was a founding document. The date? 1946. The location? A bombed-out, third-floor room of a department store in Tokyo, a city of ash and ghosts. A city that had lost everything. The man behind these words, Masaru Ibuka, had nothing. No money, no factory, only 8 employees, and a pile of rubble. And yet, he wrote a manifesto of impossible hope. Which brings us to the question that will haunt us today. How do you build a global empire on a promise when all you possess is the dust of your own defeat? Stay with me. The answer will change how you see your own failures forever. Fast forward 70 years. The name Sony is etched into the fabric of modern life. The Walkman, the PlayStation, cameras that capture our most precious memories, movies that shape our culture. It's a titan of technology and entertainment, a symbol of Japanese innovation and relentless quality. And at its genesis, there was Masaru Ibuka, an engineer, a dreamer, a man who, by all conventional logic, should have failed. We love to tell stories of success as a straight line. An idea, a struggle, a grind, and then victory. We talk about funding rounds, killer products, and strategic genius. But that's the sanitized version. That's the story we tell to make ourselves feel safe. The real story is always messier. It's more human. So, the big question we need to ask is not how Ibuka built Sony. The question is, why it worked when it should have collapsed. Was Sony built on brilliant strategic thinking and business acumen? Or was it forged from a radical philosophy, an almost spiritual act of defiance born from absolute desperation? The answer isn't what you'd find in a business textbook. It's a lesson in human spirit, a testament to the power of a purpose-driven life. Let's erase the timeline. Forget the global success. I want to take you somewhere else. Not to Ibuka's childhood, not to his university days. Let's go straight to the heart of the failure. The year is still 1946. That grand manifesto has been written. The 8 employees are looking at him, their eyes filled with a fragile hope that borders on delusion. They need to eat. They need a salary. They need a win. Now. So Ibuka and his team scramble. They find a niche. After the war, cooking rice was a chore. The power supply was inconsistent. So, they invented an automatic electric rice cooker. The idea was brilliant. A simple wooden bucket with aluminum electrodes at the bottom. When the rice was cooked and had absorbed all the water, the electrical resistance would skyrocket, and a thermostat would trip, shutting it off. Simple, elegant. It was a complete and utter disaster. Depending on the type of rice, the amount of water, the fluctuating voltage from the city's ruined power grid, it would either produce a mushy, inedible sludge or a charred, burnt brick. It never worked reliably. Not once. They sold fewer than 100 units, mostly to friends and acquaintances who bought them out of pity. Imagine that moment. Picture Ibuka, standing in that cold, empty room. He's not a future CEO. He's just a man. A man who made a promise to his people. A promise of a playground for engineers. And the first toy he built was a broken one. This is the peak of his pain. It's not about the money lost. It's the crushing weight of letting people down. It's the loneliness of the leader whose vision has just slammed into the brutal wall of reality. The specific, critical mistake? Believing that a clever idea was a substitute for rigorous, patient execution. He rushed, driven by the desperate need for a product, any product. And in that moment of failure, he came face to face with his true enemy. It wasn't a competitor. It wasn't the shattered economy. He had to give it a name. The enemy was the ghost of scarcity. This ghost was born from the rubble of the war. It whispered in his ear every single day. There isn't enough. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough resources. Grab what you can, fast, before it's gone. The ghost of scarcity is what made him rush the rice cooker. It's what made him prioritize speed over excellence. It's the voice that tells you to take the shortcut, to accept good enough, because perfect is a luxury you can't afford. It is the absolute opposite of an abundance mindset. And Ibuka realized, holding that useless wooden bucket, that if he didn't exorcise this ghost, his company, his dream would remain buried in the ashes forever. He had to stay hard, but hardness without direction is just brittleness. Now, conventional wisdom tells us to fail fast, learn fast. The lesson here should be, okay, the rice cooker failed. Let's analyze the technical flaws and build a better version. But Ibuka learned a lesson far deeper, a lesson that defied logic. His takeaway wasn't about the product. It was about the process. It was about the soul of his enterprise. The counterintuitive lesson was this: your first, most painful failure is not a lesson in strategy. It is a spiritual diagnosis. It's a mirror. It doesn't show you what you did wrong. It shows you who you are at your core when pressure is applied. The failure of the rice cooker revealed that they were operating from a place of fear, the fear created by the ghost of scarcity. And so, the solution wasn't to build a better product. The solution was to build a better culture. A culture so powerful, so deeply rooted in its core promise, that it could starve the ghost. They had to stop asking, what can we sell? And start asking, what can we create that is truly excellent, even if it takes longer? How do we serve the world? This shift required immense discipline and a new kind of motivation. So let's rewind again. But this time, let's look at that founding manifesto not as a piece of paper, but as a weapon. A weapon forged specifically to kill the ghost of scarcity. Think about the sheer insanity of it. In a country focused on basic survival food, Shelter Ibuka was writing about joy in creation and elevating culture. He wasn't talking about profit margins. He was talking about a philosophy. He declared that their primary purpose was not to make money, but to create a stable workplace where engineers could feel the joy of technological innovation, be aware of their mission to society, and work to their heart's content. This was their secret weapon, an abundance mindset in the face of absolute lack. This philosophy became the bedrock of their daily discipline. If a project didn't spark that joy, if it didn't feel like it was pushing boundaries, it was questioned. This wasn't about manifestation techniques in a mystical sense. It was a practical, daily commitment to a higher standard. It was the ultimate tool for self-development, both for Ibuka and for every engineer he hired. It provided the study motivation for them to learn, to tinker, to pursue perfection not for the market, but for the sake of the craft itself. This is the essence of being purpose-driven. Now, let's apply the flaw spotlight. Was Ibuka a perfect visionary? Absolutely not. He had a significant flaw, a kind of tinkerer's curse. He would become so mesmerized by the elegance of a technology, the beauty of a circuit, that he would completely lose sight of its commercial viability. His passion for pure engineering sometimes made him a terrible businessman in the short term. Colleagues would describe how he'd champion projects that were technical marvels, but commercial dead ends. But here's the magic. This flaw made him real. It made him relatable. More importantly, it was the flip side of his greatest strength. His obsession with technological beauty, while sometimes impractical, was what prevented the ghost of scarcity from ever taking root again. He cared more about the promise, the playground, than the profit. And that, paradoxically, is what eventually led to unimaginable profit. It showed a commitment to his spiritual journey of creation over mere wealth creation. So how do we, in our own lives, use this? How do we turn this beautiful philosophy into something we can apply when we're facing our own bombed-out department store? We can call it the Manifesto Method. It's a simple, 3-step formula for building from nothing. 1. Define your promise, not your product. Before you figure out what you're going to do, the job, the business, the project, figure out why you are doing it. What is the core promise you are making to yourself? Is it a promise of creativity, of service, of learning? Write it down. This promise is your constitution. It's the standard against which all opportunities are measured. It provides ultimate clarity. 2. Build a sandbox, not a cage. Your life, your work environment, are they designed to enable freedom and experimentation, or to restrict you? The ghost of scarcity builds cages. It tells you to stick to the safe path. The Manifesto Method demands you build a sandbox, a safe space to play, to experiment, to fail, without existential dread. This is true personal development. 3. Measure by joy, then by profit. This is the hardest step. Ask yourself, does this work energize me? Does it make me feel alive? Prioritize the intrinsic motivation, the joy of the process. The success, the money, the recognition, those are byproducts. They are the results of authentic, energized effort. The moment you chase the byproduct, the joy vanishes. And so does the quality of your work. Be grateful for the process itself. At the beginning of this journey, I read you a line from a 70-year-old document written in the ashes of a fallen empire. To establish an ideal factory that stresses a spirit of freedom and open-mindedness. Now, we hear those words differently. They aren't just hopeful words. They aren't corporate fluff. They are a declaration of war. They were the shield, the sword, and the rallying cry against the ghost of scarcity. It wasn't idealism. It was a brutally pragmatic survival strategy. The only way to build something from nothing was to operate from a mindset of everything. An abundance mindset. That piece of paper, that promise, was the single most important product Masaru Ibuka ever created. Your Tokyo in ashes, it might be a layoff, a failed business, a creative project that fell flat, a relationship that ended. We all have our rubble. We all have our ghosts whispering that we are not enough, that we don't have enough. The lesson from Masaru Ibuka is not to build a better rice cooker. It's to write a better manifesto. What is the promise you can make to yourself, right here, right now, standing in your own ruins? A promise of discipline, of learning, of kindness to yourself, a promise to focus on yourself and your healing journey? The ultimate motivational truth is this. True success isn't about achieving a flawless victory. It's about finding a state of inner peace and a sense of purpose while living an imperfect life. It's about being grateful for the struggle because it forces you to define what truly matters. It's the drive that answers the question, how bad do you want it? You have to be ready to fly. So, what's your manifesto? I'd genuinely love to know. Leave a comment below and share one line, one promise you are making to yourself today. Let's build a community of architects, building beautiful things from the ashes. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This is how we keep the conversation and the inspiration going. Until next time, stay hard, stay hopeful, and keep building.